Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today is a humble leader, emphasizing team and company culture to create the best results. He is a second-generation owner and the GM of Pro Printers. Please welcome Ryan Scott.
Thank you, Michael. I can honestly say I've never been called a titan before, so that's a first.
You're a titan of industry,
Thank you.
sir.
Yes.
You have a really great company that I've had the pleasure of working with. A lot of times in these introductions, I tend to just go to the website and pull a little bit about the company and
Sure.
share it through the company's what the company has to say about themselves, or what you might have to say about your company. And
Sure.
I decided on this one not to do that because of my experience working with you.
Okay.
And I wanted to just share it through my eyes
Alright.
on the introduction
Wow,
of Pro
okay.
Printers to everyone. I had the pleasure of learning about Pro Printers when you did a presentation for the New Paltz Chamber.
All right, I remember
You had
that.
done a morning coffee for everyone.
It's
And I
been
heard
like
you
3
speak.
years ago or so now,
It was a
maybe.
while ago. It was
Yeah.
probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I heard you speak and I was like, man, that's how I want to sound.
Really?
So I thought you were a great speaker.
Wow,
that
thank
was
you.
that was the first piece, which I think is also real important when we think about our audience, which are entrepreneurs, business leaders, people growing in their businesses, on how the importance of being a good public speaker, a good communicator, in that I was there, and of course I value it, so I'm listening and paying attention to it, but I'm sure others value it as well. And that left a quick impact on me. To when you fast forward 2 years later, when I opened up my company,
Right.
you were the first thought that came to mind for
Wow.
printing, was call Ryan at Pro Printers, I said to Cecile, who you've gotten to
Right.
know, my assistant. And so that was the first step. And I think that that's really important. And then the next step was how willing you were to work with us, which is what I found also really great, is I had used, to be honest, I'd used Vistaprint in the past, an online printing source, which worked out well. You know, it did what I needed to do. I went online, I printed everything. But this experience was much different. I was able to tell Cecile, tell my assistant what I'm looking for. She was able to share that with you, and then
Right.
you were able to come back with some feedback, your thoughts, your expertise,
Right.
and then develop really cool marketing materials for my company. And then adding, I think, a personal touch to a lot of it. And then the other piece to all of that I want to share that you could probably find on the website was that you were reasonably priced, and you were very competitive in the sense of I didn't have to shop around really. I knew that I was getting the right price for the value that I was receiving.
Right.
And then when I received the products, they were timely, so I was able to get them very quickly. I remember that. And to that point, just for everybody, I just did a workbook that Cecile sent in yesterday to Ryan, and he hand-delivered it to me today, so cool to have
was my pleasure.
in my hands. So timely, and then just the quality of the product, just
Okay.
really beautiful. We've had our business cards done with you. We've had so many other projects done with you, and every time I hand that piece of paper over to somebody, or that business card over to somebody, they're like, "Whoa, this is really cool. Where'd you get this done?"
Yeah.
And it's something that I think is just like public speaking might be overlooked. The printing is overlooked in that somebody just goes, "I'm just going to get these cards done for 99 cents or whatever it is, the
Yep.
cost, right, of printing,
Yep.
or these flyers done." But they don't understand the value of when you hand that over. What are you telling that consumer? What are you telling that customer when you hand that business card over? What kind of product are you selling yourself? And so I thought that I wanted to share that from my personal experience of working with you guys at Pro Printers.
Wow, thanks.
It's so important, the relationships that we build in our communities, and so for all of our listeners, you might have your own Ryan Scott in your community.
That's right.
I just think it's so important to work with the people that you get to meet and that leave a really great impact on you. And if the online source is easy for now, find that person in your community like you, Ryan, who can deliver a product like you guys do.
That's
so,
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I feel like you're touching on something that is at the heart of at least what we try to convey, and I think it's important for your listeners to convey to their audience as well, which is relevance. We try to stay relevant to our customers, to our client base. And that idea of relevance, I feel like you're like literally just putting words to that to the concept of relevance. because I know that the Vistaprints of the world exist. So how am I going to be relevant to the business down the street, right? What am I going to offer? How am I going to share? What information am I going to share so that they'll feel like my services are relevant? Because if we're not relevant, then the noise around us of the other competition, whatever, is simply going to just outdo us.
Right.
So that's what we strive for, and I'm like just so humbled to hear you say that, because that's really exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we're relevant and that you feel as a customer that you feel like you were taken care of.
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah, and I think that that's so important too for all these our entrepreneurs and everybody that's out there that's trying to do something. It's that, and we talked about this in my podcast with Tom Langan, and in terms of competition, is that there really is no competition when you're doing what you just said. When you're being relevant, there is no competition, because you're offering and providing a service that nobody else can.
That's right.
And you're meeting the needs of the person that values that. I value a really thick business card that somebody, when they get it, when I hand it to them, they recognize that there was intention put into this business card. So I value that. There's other people who don't, and that's okay. They might not be your client, or you have a product for them, which is cool too.
That's right.
So I'm glad that we got to touch on that, and like I said, I wanted to put my little spin on pro printers.
Thank you.
I do value the relationship. So I want to get into how you got into printing. You have, just like many entrepreneurs, an interesting background in that it's kind of like a right field kind of swing here, right?
Very much.
Where you were in chemistry, you were going to, I don't know if you're a chemist right now or not.
I'm not a chemist.
But you took,
only at heart.
But chemistry at heart. So tell me a little bit about the journey in science for you.
Sure. Okay, well, I mean, in high school, I just loved science in general. It just seemed to click in my brain. So when guidance counselors asking, well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go to school? And what do you want to study? Just science was, I'm like 17, 18 years old. I don't know what I want to do.
Right.
I want to hang out with my friends, what I want to do. But anyway, I went into science and studied it for all 4 years. I got a degree from SUNY New Paltz in chemistry. And I get out and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do now? Maybe I'm going to be an engineer. I didn't really want to go down the teaching track. So engineering was kind of the path. I started with a year at IBM in their research and development facility in East Fishkill. And I just didn't like it. It wasn't so much I didn't like the chemistry. I didn't like that really large management structure, the multiple tiers, and it just seemed like it's just so easy for a person to get lost. I kind of just felt like I just didn't feel like it was a personal experience for me as far as the company valuing me. I'm sure there are many people who are very happy in that environment. I just happen not to be. So when about a year came up and I got passed over for employment, they were pulling out of a pool of what they called temporary workers to be hired full-time, I got passed over. And I just felt, again, another level of devaluing. And then my father was hiring. Now this is going back to 1997. He was growing. His print shop had started about 8 years earlier. And he was growing. And he said, hey, if you're looking for a job, I could use help at the print shop. Believe me, printing at that time was the last thing I wanted to do. So I said, you know what, I'll do that for a few years until something better comes along. But it turns out within, 6 months or so, I just started to love it because we were making real tangible products. There was a craftsmanship, there was an artistry to it, and that tangible nature of the product just that clicked with me. So I have somewhat of an artistic background when it comes to music. So I'd never really done anything visual and craft like that, and I just love doing it. So that's at least the journey kind of through science to IBM to then ultimately printing, and that I still love that tangible nature of what we do today. Like when you have that business card in your hand, you love giving it to somebody, and we really like producing those things because we know it helps you do what you do. So I don't know if that's enough of the story of the journey.
Well, there's definitely more to unpack there, but I want to talk about the tangible nature for 1 second here because of the digital world we live in.
Yes.
And I'm just interested in maybe your perspective on the transition of, maybe it's not a transition, of how you survive in a digital world, how a paper or a print type company survives in a digital world. I'm interested in maybe that perspective.
I think we set up a false kind of battle, and when we put digital on one side and we put like analog or paper or something on the other side, because the best use of the best power of marketing is really when we're using all those things together. So it's not an either or, it's a both and. So like for example, like QR codes, like 10 years ago they came out and they kind of disappeared, but now they're on the rise again. Why? Because you can easily send now your smartphone, not before you needed an app, but now you can send your smartphone right to a thing. But the QR code has to appear somewhere, right? Sometimes it can be on a screen, but most of the time it's on the back of a business card, it's on a poster, so that's a marrying of our digital world and our analog print world. But that's always been. We had custom URLs were popular for a while. I guess I'm saying all that to say that the best way to market, the best way to get you push someone to a website or get someone to have your contact information in a phone is marrying the technologies, not choosing one or the other. So I guess to me that's at least the concept, or maybe I should say the foundation of how we approach marketing with our clients. It's not, oh, well, if you sent out the email, then you must not want to send a print newsletter. No, okay, I grant you 20 years ago, maybe everyone sent the print newsletter, but here's what's happening now. The email newsletter still goes out, but maybe there's a group of maybe major accounts, maybe your top buyers, maybe there's a subset of your clients now that you send also that hard copy to. Then go forward now into the whole, when we had COVID, all this work at home actually created even more opportunity for print than before. There's an easy way to feel detached if you're just sitting in front of a computer screen and you work for somebody that's, maybe the home office is miles away. And what a lot of offices did, they made these little packs for people at home. Maybe it had a cup, a mug, a coaster, these were printed tangible items that helped people feel more connected. Yeah, we were all in Zoom meetings, right? How many of those did we have? And we're all communicating via text and email. But these little items, sometimes with a logo, sometimes with a sentiment, help us, because they're tangible, they help us feel more connected to each other. So again, I guess really bottom line again is it's not either or, it's really both and. We need the digital, but we need the analog. And it's almost sad to me when people start to think they have to choose one or the other.
I'm glad that you said that, and the neither either or, and it's both. It's so funny. My business coach Merritt always talks about that when we're going through things, and I'm going through scenarios with her, and I'm going, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to choose this situation, and we're not even just talking print. We're talking about a lot of different things, right? That I'm sure you know as we go through. And she goes, but why are you looking at it as either or? You can look at it as both, and you can look at it. As one or the other. You can look at it as both. You can look at it, as this whole. So I like that you talk about it that way. And right now we're at iHeart, right? And Lara, who I work with, or who works with me on my marketing campaigns, kind of speaks to me in the same way. We speak about radio, and it's funny because it's funny doing a podcast on a radio station and saying this. I don't really listen to the radio, and I remember saying that to her. I said, but why am I going to do radio? I don't do radio. And she said, but you're not the only person out there. There's a lot of people who listen to radio. That's it's not either or, it's taking radio, it's adding SEO, it's adding all these other elements.
That's
and I like that you said that with print, is that it's very similar. And to that point, that's, at first when I was starting my company, Denten, so with Michael Esposito Inc., it was like, it's a company where I'm meeting with people and I'm giving them goods and I'm giving them things, tangible things like a business card and everything. But with Denten, when I started that, it was, or it still is, but it's just kind of morphing in that it's a tech company. And I kept saying it's a tech company. And when I hired employees, they said, are we going to get business cards? I said, no, we're a tech company. We're going to email people. It's all online. And then I soon learned, to your point, that people still were looking for that tangibility, that business card that they could hand to somebody. And it wasn't even the customers, it was my employees, my salespeople who were saying, I want it to be able to hand to somebody. And then to your point of that connectivity, I noticed it with two things, which one, when I handed them their business cards that you printed, thank you, when I handed them their business cards, how they felt, the expression on their face of like, whoa, I am a part of Den 10. Like I could see that, I could feel that with them.
Identity, sure.
Which, by the way, on our business cards we have the QR code, everyone, so
Uh-huh.
that did bring that tech element to it. And then I have an employee who's in Florida. That's further away. And so when I had my gathering to give everybody their business cards, I give them a business card, a shirt, a mug, and everything, and we took pictures together, and it was really cool. But my employee in Florida, Monique, who's awesome, and I've known her, she was actually from New York, and then she moved to Florida, and I said, no, you're still on board, right?
Yeah.
I felt, oh man, she got left out. So we put together a little care package for her, put everything in there.
Right.
And I have to tell you, on our morning meeting, she came on Zoom, she had her t-shirt on, she had her mug out, she was so excited. And you're 100% right. I mean, that just speaks to everything you just said there of it being so true in that I witnessed it. I didn't know that that's what I was doing.
Right.
But I witnessed what you said there, so true.
Exactly.
I love that you bring that up.
And regarding a tech company, you know, I mean, I get in the mail things from Google, right? For maybe it's a credit for what they want me to advertise. So again, I think it's a mistake even when we say, well, we're this kind of company, so we can only advertise in certain ways. Like even as a print company, we don't only send out direct mail. You know, I'm advertising other ways. So, yeah, it's just funny how sometimes those things get stuck in our heads.
Yeah.
And then it takes someone just to come along and say something seems like common sense after you know it.
Yep.
But yeah, both.
And for all of you out there, when you open your business and you do a Google My Business, Google will send you a postcard.
Yep.
So so it's going to be in the mail. And someone's got to print that postcard
That's
for
right.
them.
Someone's doing it.
I'm going to take a step back
Sure.
here and go to 1989,
Okay.
which is the assumption that I'm making on when your dad started the business.
It is.
Right? Okay.
It is.
And what's his name?
David Scott.
David Scott.
Yeah, my mom
okay.
and dad started it in '89, right in Hudson, New York.
Okay, cool. So tell me a little bit about that, because you got to work very closely with your dad.
Yes.
What was his reason for opening up Pro Printers? And was it called Pro Printers right away?
It was. It
Okay.
was Pro Printers. He had a partner at the time, and he started it. He had a career change, so he suddenly found himself in need of an income. And he had a printing background because a friend of his had given him a position in a printing company, you know, years and years before that. He remembered liking it, and he said, "That I know how to do that. So let's go find a place in the area that is underserved in that market." And so he started the print shop in Hudson, and yeah, I mean, I got involved then 8 years later, and he had been so, I'll say, good at it, just from a skill perspective. My dad has good just business sense in general, that he was growing quickly. My father, one thing I really want to credit him for is he also never sat on his laurels when it comes to like technology or success. So he would constantly reinvest in the company to make sure that maybe that speaks to that relevance point I was talking about before, but changing the technology to adapt to the times. And so I think that was part of what made him so successful in Hudson for so many years, and what grew his influence as a business in that period. And then when I joined in '97, I'd worked summers, you know, running a machine here and there and helping out Dad. But when I started, I was right at the bottom. I started in the finishing department, so I was packing boxes and cutting jobs, and but then I just moved my way up. And what happened is I received an intimate knowledge of like every phase of the business. So I knew, you know. So now when I'm talking to someone about a print project, I can just tell what every department, how that's going to impact every department, the amount of labor, the supplies, what it's going to need what we're going to need to do to actually fulfill that order, to make it a reality.
Right.
Because I literally have been in every one of those positions, and I know what it takes. So I'm really thankful for the experience from like '97 all the way through about 2008 when the recession hit. Before I became a manager in the company, because I ran everything, and
Right.
it really gave me that ground, you know, that foundational knowledge to be able to run the company the way I do today.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, it's so important to understand every role and position in the company, and we're going to speak about company culture in a second, but I think that has such a great impact on company culture, where when you're speaking with somebody, they know, or at least they understand that you can empathize with them, which I think is really important, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I want to speak about your dad,
Yeah.
David, and what was your mother's name again? I'm sorry.
Linda.
Linda.
Yep.
And you mentioned about them reinventing, and you just talked a little bit about it, but I want to kind of dig in a little bit, in the recession of '08.
Yes.
Where there was obviously tremendous...
Major downturn, absolutely. Yeah.
So speak a little bit about that. What happened in the business, and what did
Sure.
you see some of the things that he did in order to adapt to it?
I mean, I think I'll start from an emotional aspect. I mean, we had come off, I think, on the heels of 2008. We had come off a company, a year that was like really great for the company. Like my dad had reached new levels of sales, and all of a sudden 2009 comes along and almost like the bottom drops out.
May I ask for a second on going into 2008? So you deal with a lot of businesses, right?
Yes.
And my assumption, this is just an assumption because of what happened in '08 and what led to a lot of that had to do with the real estate market, were a lot of the businesses that you guys worked with real estate companies?
No, okay, so they're in the mix, of course,
Yeah.
but I would say even at that time, we were still probably 60% nonprofits, believe it or not.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay.
So these are anywhere from like organizations listeners might have heard of, like United Ways of the world, things like that, to like small nonprofits that you might not have heard of unless you were a part of them specifically, like a, for example, like a lake association or something where only the homeowners around that, that property know about it. So and everywhere in between. So that still actually is a majority of our client base today.
Right.
But so nonprofits and for-profit businesses.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to have kind of like diverted us a little bit
No,
away
it's
from that.
fine.
I was just interested in that, if that had played in any role in that. So yeah, so you were saying, so in '08, so now you have this
Yes.
big downturn. Well,
Yes.
first you had this really great growth,
That's right.
and then this huge downturn that happens. So what happened next? How did you guys come out of it?
Sure. Again, I have to give credit to my father because we were, at least what he says now, we were very close to shutting our doors during that time. It was
Wow.
about right at the end of our middle or end of 2008. And he realized that he might not have all the tools necessary to navigate this next phase of whatever the business was going to be. He got a business coach involved, and it changed everything because once the business consultant came in, my father was, number one, committed to whatever he needed to do to save the business he was going to do. And that's that, again, that I give him credit for that fortitude of that determination and perseverance to say, number one, I don't know it all. Number two, we need help. And number three, if we're going to make this thing succeed, we better do what they say. And that was it. That changed everything. So, being in debt, close to, closing the doors for good, we made, basically changed the company from the bottom up. I mean, everything from the organizational structure, how we processed orders, how we got orders out the door, like everything. And I can honestly say it was probably one of the hardest things I've watched my parents go through as an adult. Because it was, in some ways, there was a lot of tears. There was a lot of just anguish, frankly. Like, they had to let go of people that were like family. I mean, some of these people had been working for my parents for like dozens of years, but we couldn't support it anymore. And if this thing was going to be salvaged, things had to change. And it was really heartbreaking for my mom and dad. The thing I take away from that now is that there's going to be some things that there's some hard decisions we're going to have to make as entrepreneurs. But if we do the right thing, we can make it through. It's not going to be easy. It wasn't easy for my mom and dad. So I really respect them for doing that. And if we kind of fast forward through that, so emotionally it was really hard. And then we just changed, like I said, we were just willing to change the way we did business and continue to be relevant to our communities. There were businesses that simply shut their doors, so those customers didn't exist. We're not going to get those people back. There were some people who were still there, but now they cut back their buying because their budgets shrunk, just like ours did. And so between the two of those, we had to figure out how we're going to ride this out. My dad took a huge risk in doubling down on technological changes. Okay, well, we need to get orders out faster than we did before. We need to cut our costs so we can do it more efficiently than before. And between listening to the consultant, making the changes, investing in new technology, he made it through. And I'll say it probably took until 2012 before all of the changes that he really wanted to make finally stuck, meaning just keep doing it day after day, being and paying off a lot of the debts that we incurred through that time, just losing money, and but we did it. And when my wife Carrie, and I bought the business in 2018, we had a solid business because of the work and the investment of sweat, blood, and tears that my father and mother made during that time. So I'm thankful for that.
That's incredible, and I love how you put it together for us, because I did have questions about what you guys did to make the changes, so I do like that you were able to share that in that story there. My question in there is about some of the different technologies and different things that your dad used at the time or took in at the time, and you said some of them stuck and some of them didn't. I'm experiencing some of that right now, where I take on new technologies and I'm like, I don't know if this is the right one. Where my question lies, and I think where anybody who's listening might have an issue, with they might have purchased something and hope that it works really well, but not sure when to cut ties with it, or what the outcome from this technology is, right?
Sure.
How did your father make decisions around the technologies that he started taking on? How did he make decisions on whether I'm going to keep this and this is it, and we're going to ride it out and we're going to take the ups and downs with it, or we're going to give it 3 months and we're going to see how it goes in 3 months? And how many of those stuck around? Did you see him go through a lot of different changes, or was it like they had a 5-piece plan and it was like all 5 went through the end?
I would say, thinking back now, I would say it was more of there were some things that were very sudden, like we knew we needed a better software system to more efficiently write up our orders so we could process jobs more quickly. The purchase of that was immediate. So like in 2008, we bought a new system. But there were things that went along with that, like, for example, just learning it and setting it up, which was a huge undertaking in and of itself.
And then getting everybody to use it.
And then getting everybody to use it. And some of that's cultural, like, well, what was wrong with the old way?
Right.
So some of it is changing people's minds to say, hey, this isn't just about, hey, let's buy software for software's sake. This was about, no, because of what my dad had just been through, this was, no, if we don't use this technology, we're not going to make it. Like, this is one of the tools we're going to use to make sure that we're going to be around. So again, I think it speaks to that, like, persistence and the idea of my father had that sense of, no, this is what we need to utilize to survive. So in that case, there wasn't ever something that didn't stick when it came to that technology, but it was more of a cultural and a mindset change that took a while to happen.
What I like to do when I'm looking at a software or a company is I like to see what their competitors are doing and take meetings with their competitors. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's their competitors. It just means, like, for me, at least I know what I'm getting from this person. I know what the pros and cons are and everything, and I know what I'm getting involved in.
Yes.
And so that's what I like to do. And I remember telling that salesperson, I'm still waiting to meet with this other company. And that's when he said that. And he's like, it's been a couple months now. And I said, well, I'm just not ready yet to move forward.
Yeah.
But when I do feel like something's right for me, I move forward with it.
Yeah.
Which led to maybe my question there, which might have been a little confusing at first, but while you were speaking, I was able to develop it a little bit better, which is, and this is just personal to what I'm working with right now internally at my company, is I purchased a software that I thought was just really great for the company, really great for our clients. It's a client portal, really. And I formed a really nice relationship with the staff in this company, and I was very happy, and I am very happy with them. And then I was at a conference, and then I found 3 other companies that do the same thing that they do, and a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, what did I do? Did I jump too quick? Did I make a decision too quickly? And when I went back, I found that there were pros and cons to both companies.
Sure.
But some of it comes in with relationships with me, and I built a relationship, like I just said, with the staff. And then what I learned was, and what I wanted to speak about with adoption, with employee adoption, is that I've committed to this one company, and I believe they have a really good product. The competitors are adding little bells and whistles to the product, but it's essentially the same. And the one that I'm with right now, they're going to be adding some of those things. And one of my employees just asked me recently, they said, are you comfortable waiting an extra month or so from what they tell us, which we know is even further out?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable waiting for those bells and whistles? Being vague intentionally, by the way. Are you comfortable waiting for those bells and whistles? And I said, yeah. And I didn't tell her this, but part of the question I have for you too is adoption is, I'm thinking about it, I'm going, for me to now switch, pull this software out from underneath my employees,
Sure.
pull it out from underneath my customers who have now signed into it,
Sure.
and then put it in this new technology,
Right.
which is essentially the same, it just has a couple more things, I would think would just be even more detrimental than just waiting, right?
Yeah. So actually, we're going through something very similar right now. There's a product that we use to write up all of our invoices and our job tickets and things, but there's another whole product that helps us do customer service better, like notify customers when jobs are ready and follow up on proofs and estimates. And that was the same kind of thing. So my thought process with going, why choose it? Do I need it? All that kind of thing was, first I sought the advice of just people in my industry who are using it already, people I trust.
Right.
It's not just some generic message board or something, and it's not the company's website with their testimonials. These are real people on the ground using this software every day.
So important.
And when they started telling me that, because then you're going to get that unfiltered, hey, it's good at this, it's not so good here, the warts and all, which you're not going to get from a salesperson. So that was big when they started. So then I went back to the other standard that I use is this going to save us time? Is this going to help us do more with the same amount of people with the same hours in the day? And then lastly, is it going to actually add value to my clients? Is it going to be something where they're going to look at and say, oh, Pro Printers is potentially better because fill in the blank, because I can do this with them through this software. Once I could check all those boxes, then I went in. And yeah, once I got in, were there even some things I still didn't realize they didn't do, or I wish it had done, or whatever, of course. But to your point, my customers are using it now. If I change it 6 months later, what you always got to think about, what message are you putting in front of your client, right? If that's from the in-person meeting, how do you look? I remember a consultant telling us years ago, look nice, smell nice, be nice. What are you conveying? But these little things, what does your website look like? What does your marketing look like? Your printing. These are all different forms of an impression you're making on your client. And if I change software right now, which I'm not actually considering because I actually really like this one piece of software, but you're right, I think it would send the wrong message. It would send like, this company seems a little chaotic. Like, you never want to send a chaotic message to your clients, right? But it's okay also not to you don't have to also pretend you have everything together all the time either, okay? It's a different story, I suppose. But anyway, I guess I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think that what you just said there is basically, if it's working well, and I think if it's working well, and you see that it's good for the company and working really well, there's always going to be another company out there that does something similar, just as good or whatever it is.
Sure.
But if this is working well, and this is pretty much what you decided to choose, ride that choice out.
Stick it out.
I think that speaks to what you learned from your dad too, about that fortitude of, you pick something and just looking at it for what it is and going,
That's right.
I'm going to move forward with it. And like you said, if you picked something, or if I pick something, or anybody out there picks a software or something that really isn't good for the company, and you learn that it's clunky and it's just a failure, there's a couple things I think that we just talked about that you might want to consider. Well, one is probably get rid of it very quickly.
Drop it, yeah.
But before you replace it, I would say is, did you do your due diligence ahead of time? And you just said that, which I love that you said, which is speaking to people that are using it. And I think that speaks to so much about the no competition around us, because I'm sure some of the people that you spoke with would be considered competition, that are in the same industry, in the same field as you. Yeah. And when you have that mindset where there's no competition, we're all working together, then you're able to reach out to your peers, to people that are using software that you're using. And the only people that are using the same software as you are in the printing field.
That's right.
So you have to look at that. And I think that old school mentality of like, they're our enemy and we're never going to, it doesn't help you.
Does not. I walked into a breakfast meeting a few years back, and it was one of these things where there was these regional marketing things, and we had decided to merge two regions for a collective breakfast. And there was another printer in the room, and I remember he stood up right before me, because we were all doing our introductions, and he said, well, what did you invite this guy for?
Wow.
Yeah, and he points at me.
Oh my
Now,
goodness.
he was one of these guys that just it was just very vocal anyway, and half of it was tongue in cheek, but not all of it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember not like feeling embarrassed, but more like just like, dude, like what's your problem? Like
Right.
there's enough work out there for both of us. Why are you
Right.
threatened by me being in the room?
Mhm.
First of all, I've only been in the industry 10 years. You've been in the industry 25 years. If anybody should be intimidated here, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the deal? I still don't really understand. I could only speculate, but that stuck with me, of that mentality of like you versus me. I find it's way more productive if we can just drop that. Yeah, there's overlap. Sometimes our markets and different maybe, but don't we all do slightly different things? Don't we
Mhm.
all handle maybe a different subset of customers better?
Mhm.
And some people are a good fit. So my industry overlaps the sign industry a little
Mhm.
bit. We can do similar things. And it's okay for me to send a job that, yeah, I technically could do it, but I think they're better served by a sign person to that business. So instead of a competitive relationship, we actually have a referral relationship where we can actually work together. So anyway, I take the same stance. So I'm probably preaching to the choir. Your listeners are probably the same way, but.
Well, it's always good to reinforce it, because actually I've experienced that firsthand with you when we sent a job over your way and you said, well, actually it's really not our thing, and here's who you can go to.
Yeah.
I thought that was,
Yeah.
and I think that speaks. I think that also speaks to the nobility of the company, the integrity of the company. When you hear that, then you know that when they do sell you something, you're like, okay, then that's their thing, right?
Right. You're right.
I feel that way, because then I'm like, well, if you're going to turn away this job, but you'll take this job, then obviously it makes.
You're right. I never thought of the trust factor.
This is
there.
You're
You're
thing.
building trust.
To me, you're building trust. To me, I always think, whenever I hear a salesperson speak negatively about their competition, one, I'm like, all right, how are they trained? Because I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that they were just maybe mistrained.
Sure.
But then if they really, like, if you could see it in their personality, you're like, how much do I want to stay with you? Because like when you leave that company, are you going to be bad mouthing that? Like to me, it is a trust thing. And going back to what you were asking about with that one salesperson, I think many of us have experienced that. I've experienced it too. And it's a scarcity mindset. It's that mindset of like, there isn't enough out there, and why are you here? And I think that's very sad, because to your point, there is so much out there, and it's just all different, like you said, subsets. And what makes me sad about it is I've experienced it with people in my industry that I actually viewed as mentors, and they miss the boat there. That person that you just said who had more experience, they miss a really great opportunity to get you under their wing.
Sure.
To where you can be a part of their business, even by being, quote unquote, a competitor.
Sure.
I think that, and you have that opportunity now in the shoes that you stand in, and I guess myself too, to some extent too, where we have this up and coming new crowd of people coming in, and we have an opportunity to mentor them and to teach them all these awesome new things that we're learning, and then we get to learn from them.
That's right.
Because there's so much coming out. When we were talking about technology, I was just speaking with a 10-year-old this morning. I was dropping off the kids this morning, and I get to drop off Lara's kids, and he's Ryan's 10 years old. Yeah. And we were talking about the metaverse. Have you heard about the metaverse, right?
Yes, this Marvel concept, right? Or no?
Well, the metaverse is, it's actually Facebook, I think, made it.
Oh, okay,
made
Meta,
it, like, kind of opened it up to us, to the public. But this is the virtual reality world.
Yes, okay, right.
And what Mark Zuckerberg and other big tech people are talking about is that they can't build it by themselves. They need Microsoft. They need I'm just putting names in here, but they need Tesla. They need all these different to build out the metaverse, because essentially the metaverse is what the internet is today.
I see.
How did the internet become what it is? Is that we needed an AOL to come in. We needed what was it? Net zero was one of them.
Yes.
Right? Like
wow, that's a blast from the past.
We needed all of these different companies to build out websites to develop so that we have what we see today as the internet of like being able to hop around a website to website.
Right.
Well, the metaverse is the same. Right now, it's like this empty virtual reality space. Okay. They need all these companies. So anyway, so he's 10, and we were talking about it, and he said, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "Oh, I know what Oculus is, the VR glasses."
Yep.
And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Probably by the time you're 15, that's where you're going to go. You're not going to go to a desktop or a lap. You're going to go to the metaverse to find out.
The screen will be like the full three-dimensional
you'll be hanging out.
Wow.
We're a little off topic here, but I think what I'm getting at with that is that we also have an opportunity to learn from those up and comings, and those people who can be perceived as mentors to us, or people in the field that are have that legacy ahead of us.
Sure.
They can learn from you, right? They could learn from you. So
I think the learning is that's a mindset, because once you start to realize that listening to others, learning from others, isn't just for people maybe who share similar ideals as you or have similar experience as you. You start to see that you can learn from everyone. I mean, you learn something from a 10-year-old, right? But that could be people have gone before you, people after you. It could be in people different fields. But yeah, that to me, I guess the most important thing is learning is like a very humble mindset, but it's so valuable. It's so valuable. You can stay in that learning phase. You will find something to learn every single day.
Which is such a perfect transition into why I called you a humble leader. Okay. And it's you spoke about this in your bio to me about being humble and having that personality, which one I am interested in that might be a trait that you've always had innate to you, but I assume that there's also somebody who maybe helped you learn to be the way that you are, I guess. But with that, you had a veteran come in to Pro Printers and then teach you something that helped expand your knowledge on printing and building out brochures for customers, and from what I understand, it lessened the amount of time that you had to spend working on one project because of his expertise. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting with the humility aspect, I think I'll have to again give credit to my father. He was always the kind of guy. He wasn't going to be the first one to praise himself. He wasn't going to be the first one to give himself a pat on the back. And so I feel like again I gleaned just a lot of that mentality from. He wanted to let his work speak for itself, and that's where I think I primarily learned that trait. When it came to the story of this gentleman I learned from, so his name was Michael Gladstone. He's no longer with us, and he used to work. He used to work in the industry, in the printing industry, at the time when they were still using metal type to lay out pages for publications. So he worked in the producing books. And when you are physically touching letters, because that's what they did. The metal type was literally these little characters. You would just get an amazing sense. At least now I learned you'd get an amazing sense for what would fit on a page. And so he would be tasked sometimes by a company to go in and maybe they gave him verbiage. They would give him like the text they wanted for a brochure, and he would be tasked for making it look right on the page. Page layout software still existed. But unfortunately, he just had such an artistry that he could make it look so much better. And it really wasn't art. You and I put it into Word, or we put it into whatever software program we are, and we don't even know we're benefiting from people like Michael, because he and others, well, at least the programming part of it, they were able to take what these guys did, men and women did, and put it into the programs now so that the letters actually look right next to each other. I'm sure I could bore everyone with a bunch of stories about why that's so important, but I'll fast forward to the day I sat down with him, and we're looking at the computer screen, and there's the brochure text on the screen, and he was able to even say, no, take this word and put it on this line, or take the space between those words and make it a little tighter. And at the end of that process, maybe we only did it for like 45 minutes, I noticed a stark contrast between what I'm looking at now, legibility, beauty, the way it flowed with the images, versus how it started. And I'm like, whoa, like it opened my mind to not only just his talent, but there are things we look at every day that we have no idea the kind of talent that went into it, ability that went into it, or even why it's necessary. And knowing that he had that ability, it kind of just changed everything. Now I can look at something and I'm like, oh, why did the person lay it out like that? Like no one else would probably ever see it. But these little details can end up having a huge impact on how a piece is perceived. And I'm not even just talking a printed piece. This could be even how things flow on websites, signs, billboards. How things are laid out, the designing of a piece is so important. And that was one of the things he taught me. He had such an amazing, Michael Gladstone had such an amazing way with type. He was a true artist.
It's interesting. I actually am interested in the metal part to this whole
Yes.
thing. Like I'm picturing like the metal ball on the old like typewriters, and then you go even further back where you got the tink 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 the metal. But so from my understanding, what you're saying is that you literally have these metal characters, like little square, I guess I'm assuming, or rectangles or whatever, that
exactly
then get put down on some kind of pad of some sort.
They do.
And get moved around to build out words into sentences, into paragraphs.
Yes, that's exactly it.
So that must have taken hours to do.
It was such a tedious process. I mean, compared to what happens today. Literally, we get our word uppercase when we talk about capital letters because these capital letters were stored in the uppercases of the workbench. Yes, that's actually, So uppercase and lowercase letters was a thing because that's where they were placed, higher or lower.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
I feel like you got to go to my daughter's first grade class and teach that right there.
And so these metal, I mean, you can even find them in like museums now because they're not really used. I mean, specialty, maybe some niche stuff. But actual small pieces of metal, and you would put, if you wanted more space between the words, you would actually put little pieces of lead to separate the letters or the words. It blows my mind now. I never had to do any of that, but I heard these stories of it, and it was an art.
I am totally going back home and telling the girls, do you know why it's uppercase? I can't wait.
You can Google that, folks.
I actually can't wait to tell that story because I think that's so cool.
Yep.
I was just thinking about too how you said the artistry and of putting together the words and the fonts and everything, and there's a couple things that come to mind here. And when you talk about the importance of it, people don't know this, but you think about what Steve Jobs did with Apple, and are you aware, right?
Yeah.
And I maybe would ask for you to speak more about it then.
Sure.
Is about how important it was to him to have different fonts. Yeah. And at the time, that wasn't being done, and people thought that was silly.
Yeah, right. It's funny you bring that up. I listened to his biography. I listened because I did audiobook.
Me too.
Oh yeah, Walter Isaacson.
Yes,
did you read
that's
that
the one. That's how I know about this.
Amazing biography.
Yes.
Amazing biography. And it was funny too because the first story that came to mind was the one where he told about his dad painting the back of the dresser drawer. And he's like, Dad, why would you paint the back of the dresser drawer? Because no one's going to see it. He goes, well, yeah, but I'll know it's not painted. Yes. And that, I think, is part of that whole thing of artistry, of detail. And, he was an excellent example of maybe even seeing things somebody else didn't see, but being able to know as an artist, like, that's going to be important. I think there's a huge difference between an artist and a technician. I don't think we have to be one or the other, but at the same time, I feel like so many of us, we are educated to be technicians in our industry. We know all the details, we know like how to do something, but we never really look at it as artists. And I think to your point of no competition, when you're an artist, like no one can compete with you. You're creating brand new stuff.
Right.
And I think if we became more artisans and artists in our industries versus just technicians and getting really good at doing the job of the job, I think that's what really begins to build relevance. It builds trust. It attracts. technicians build stuff, make stuff, they don't necessarily attract. Artists attract, right? We go to concerts to watch artists. We go to shows and movies to watch artists. We don't usually, we'll go through a tour of a factory, but that's it, and then it's done, right? So that's my point is, become an artist in your field, whatever that means for you.
And I love that, become an artist in your field. So the other side to that is my background in acting. And I just remember in one of my film classes, the teacher speaking about a producer or a director when they're putting together a film, a TV series, whatever it is that nothing happens by mistake.
Yeah.
So you see the background actors, you see the scene, you see papers in the background, you see different wording in the background, whatever it is, whatever's happening in the scene, you have your main characters, which most of us focus on and think, oh yeah, the director had their hand all in on that. But they also, nothing happens by accident behind them.
That's right.
And when you were just describing putting together a brochure and text and all that stuff, where many of us overlook how the wording got put on there and everything, there's that artistry that comes in of like what you do behind the scenes of seeing it and looking at it, and no text is put in by accident, no font is used by accident.
Right.
It's used with purpose.
That's right.
And I think that we do, we don't realize this, but we all do see it in the way of the brands that we end up aligning ourselves with,
Yes.
the messages that we see on a billboard that we like,
Yes.
versus the ones where we just are turned off by or we just don't see, right?
That's right.
We drive by it every day, but we
Just
don't see it.
White noise.
But then there's the one that for one day we're driving on the Mid-Hudson Bridge and we see that billboard and we're like, whoa, that pops.
Yes.
Why? Is it the colors? Is it the font? Is it the message? All of that plays into it all. So I think that's that whole artistry that you speak of.
And I think artistry breeds, it almost has to start with an intention. An intentionality is so important. The rote of what we do day after day can get just the forest for the trees scenario. But being intentional, so even with whether it's, maybe I'll go back to you with the business cards, you were intentional, you had an idea, and you wanted to turn that into something. Okay, you used me to help you do that, but both you and I, in a sense, aligned our intentions, right, to make that happen. So the director friend, was intentional about how that scene looked and made sure that every time someone saw a scene through that camera lens, they were intentional about what things looked like. And I think that's a takeaway for our businesses is, it's, I'm sure there are some days when it's, we just walk into the office and do the same thing we've done before. But we got to fight that mindset because we've got to be intentional about what we're doing so that we end up being fulfilled and end up going in the direction we want to go. I feel like it's just so easy for things to take a left or right turn, whatever, get off track. But intentionality and and artistry helps us stay on that track because you know what? It's going to get hard. Okay, we just came out of COVID. That was hard, right? But there's going to be something else later.
Right.
What are we doing now so that we're intentional, so when that next dip comes, when the next, hardship comes, we're ready for it as best we can be. Anyway,
I love this because this goes into what we want to speak about again next is company culture and how you approach company culture. Something I want to just touch on with what you just said there, which you reminded me of as you were speaking, was the collaboration that went into those business cards. And I think that all of our business leaders and entrepreneurs who are listening can take a lesson in this, in that it was a true collaboration. It was me sharing an idea with you, and not you just telling me what you could do, but you actually mailed me examples.
Sure.
You had started the process with previously mailing me examples of different paper grades, which somebody might think is so simple, of like, hey, I have all these different paper grades, pick whichever one you want, and it's just paper, right? It's just paper. I mean, we're talking about paper, right? Like I feel like Iverson right now.
Saying
Practice,
like a bad word,
right? But
right.
but because we just don't think about it.
Sure.
But you mailed them to me, and then it was like this thought that goes through of like these paper that goes in, and and I'm going to go even further now because I think this will go into company culture is. Then I learned something about my assistant. I learned something about Cecile. Was she also had intention because I didn't ask for the paper, and Cecile got it from you, who then sent it to me, who then had in our meeting a conversation with me about the paper. Did you receive the samples?
Sure.
Which sample did you like? What did you like about the sample?
Sure.
To have a conversation. And at first, I got to tell you, it fell on deaf ears at first because I was like, what the hell are we talking about here? I was like, I just need a brochure. But eventually I started learning and understanding the importance of all of that. And then it went to the business cards when you mailed me all the different business cards with the different coloring and the background and all that. And then I was like, oh, this is what it looks like. And again, at first when I received it, I said, what's he mailing this to me for? And then I understood. And now when you're talking about it was a true collaboration, and that you also, when I said it to you, you went, okay, what does he want? How does he want it? And what I want to share with our audience here is that investment that you made on your end is that you didn't just take an order. And I think that this is what makes things different from a online store. Well, you have an online store, but what I mean is this, let's talk about it without a face, right? Without a personality, without a relationship. You had an investment in this job, and you wanted to know, what does Michael want? How does he want this job to come through? Mm-hmm. I'm not just taking an order, I'm putting my artistic touch on it. And so I thought there really was a true, and there still is with what we do today together, a true collaboration between us.
Yeah, I think an order taker can only receive, whether that's a website, like a the Vistaprints and things like that, or even just a human. If you're in the mindset of taking an order, you can only receive the information. But when you start to see yourself with confidence, you have something to offer during that transition. So now you're not just in a receiving mode, you're also in a giving mode, in a good way. This isn't overpowering, this isn't bullying, this is, hey, I'm in this relationship, maybe it's only one transaction, but I have something to offer here. And if you start with a humble foundation, when the opportunity arises, you can now offer your expertise from that position of, hey, I can help if you're receptive, and you were. I just think that's the power, that's that like synergy that's created when everyone involved knows they have something to offer in this process, not in a prideful way, but in a way that, I can make a difference here for good. So again, I thank you for...
And then the investment pays off, and that's what I want to share too with the audience, is that when you invest that much into your business and into your product and your services, it pays off. You end up, to me, I think you end up having a client for life, right? Or you end up building that trust to such a degree to where you think about these workbooks. I can say to Cecile, pull the trigger on it, do it, have Ryan print them out, and if you can get them to me tomorrow, awesome, I'll just take them. Right? I don't need a sample anymore, right?
That's right?
I'm like, maybe there's some things down the road I'll need samples on, but I'm like, let's do it. I know it's going to be a better product than, at first we were like, well, should we just go get them printed at Staples? And it was like, well, I'm going to see Ryan tomorrow. Let's see if he can get them to us. It was like, because I need them in a timely, right? So it was awesome. And so now this goes into company culture. And I love your approach on company culture, and we'll speak about space in a second, but we're just talking about same thing here, right? So how do you have a staff, you have a team. How do you get your company, your employees and your team to also have that ability to be humble and to be a thoughtful person in the company? Sure.
First, I have to give a lot of credit to my wife, Carrie. She's taught me so much about listening. It's huge. I remember growing up, being like maybe a young professional, and I was and when I had a conversation with someone, I was always worried about what am I going to say next? How am I going to respond? And what it would do is it would paralyze my thinking, because now I wasn't actually listening to what you were saying. I was just so worried about how I was gonna respond, or what I was gonna say next. So I would say she taught me a lot about listening, because when you're truly listening to someone, they will tell you enough about themselves that you will never have to worry about what you're going to say. Maybe this goes to if you're a salesperson in your industry, keep your ears open, because you'll learn a lot just by listening. And again, she taught me that. So I have to give credit to her. In our structure, I'm a general manager, which means primarily I'm responsible for like the vision of the company and running the day-to-day, whether it's financial, making and meeting budgets, things like that. I also do all the sales for our company. So finding customers who want what we do. We call it building demand for existing capacity. So that's my second role. My wife is the production manager. So really all the staff, because I don't have any other sales staff under me, all the staff directly report to her. And when it goes to company culture, one is we try to instill that the thing they're doing, with whatever widget they're making today, actually matters to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
These cards that they're putting in a box, this job that they're running through the digital press, this is actually someone else's livelihood. This is somebody else's mail piece that they're going to depend on to get that donation into their nonprofit. This is this postcard that someone's depending on so that their potential customer will go to their event or buy their product. So it's not just another widget. It's something that that our clients value. And that helps us see our role in the bigger picture. Not just me, but I think it just helps us all with whatever task we're doing, that this thing actually matters. So that's one of the key things that we do. The next thing is we really try to be respectful. It sounds like common sense, Michael, but just treating each other with respect in the workplace. You know, pleasantries like please, thank you, hello, good morning, have a good night. We have a morning meeting every morning for just 5 or 10 minutes. Hey everybody, how's everybody feeling? If it's Monday morning, everybody watch the big game, whatever. What's everybody doing for the holidays? We're human beings. Mm-hmm. We're human beings first. The day is going to have its own craziness. So let's just take a moment, let's just connect with each other just for a few, and let's be human beings for a few minutes, because it's going to get crazy. So that's another thing, part of the culture is I heard it said before, we're human beings, not human doings. Just treat each other like humans. Let's just do that for each other. The other thing about company culture is just taking time to check in even throughout the day. That's a small thing. Another thing is really emphasizing a team environment. If somebody runs one machine, but somebody else is in a completely different department, has a different task, it's very easy. Well, that's your space, and this is my space. Well, often we'll cross-train people to make sure that, first off, it might just be good practical sense for your business, just so in case someone's out, they know how to do it. But what it does is it teaches the team respect for that other role. That what you do isn't more important than what that other thing is. They're both necessary. And so that cross-training can really help start to foster team mentality and respect for each other, and that we're all doing this for the good of the client, so that the best possible product is made, not for a bottom line financially, but so that client can get what they need to get their message out, whatever it is. So I think those are at least a few bullet points of our company culture and the things that we try to make sure that we're telling our staff on a almost daily basis.
I love human being, not human doings.
Yep.
That's a really
I can't
cool
take credit
one.
for that, but yes.
That's a cool one. Well, it seems
I never
like you've
forgot.
had some really great, mentors and coaches and influences, and read some great books, because a lot of the things that you speak of are very high level. And it's funny because you say that, and it is ironic in that I'm saying it's high level, and you're like, we're just being nice to each other.
Yeah.
But there's so many companies and people who overlook all of everything
Yeah.
you just said,
Yeah.
and think, hey, you have a job and don't call me until the job's done.
Right.
And you're right, it just, that doesn't work.
No.
I was speaking with somebody here at iHeart. We were just talking about putting out a recruitment effort.
Yeah.
And I was trying to understand how to recruit new talent and everything. And that's exactly what he was speaking to me about. Rob over here was speaking about that people aren't just looking for a paycheck.
Yeah.
They're looking for more than that. They're looking, how do you communicate with us?
Yeah.
To kind of just put it as
Yeah.
a whole. And
Yeah,
and that's what you
culture.
speak about, is communication. So let's just wrap up the company culture piece here
Sure.
with what you guys use. So you call it SPACE.
Yeah, I call it a space concept where it's a
And I'm going to describe it for
Yeah,
everybody,
please do.
so you could speak to it. And then, so it's SPACE. S for servant-minded, P, people-focused, A, actively learning,
Mhm.
C, community-grounded, and E, engaged. So I thought that that's really cool to think about
Yeah.
when people are thinking about their team, to think about space for their team.
Right. Yeah. So as a leader, I try to create, again, this space mindset, which is when servant minded, all that really means is what are you doing to help the people around you? As a business, what are we doing as pro printers? What are we doing to help our business community? But then even internally, what is my department doing to help another department? And again, it just breaks down all those barriers of competition and division. And so that's one of the things, again, get across that we're all serving someone, right? Find out who it is and how do you help them best.
And I think, that this kind of goes back to your way of moving into the leadership role at your company, of like starting from call it the bottom, right? Call it from the mailroom, right?
Yeah.
You start from there, you learn every single piece to it all, and then now you are where you are, but you understand everybody's job. And then so like you bring in that kind of idea to the company today, that identity to the company today, where everybody's learning each other's jobs.
That's right.
And I think it goes back to that, not an either or, but a both.
Yeah.
Where it's like, one job's not more important than the other. We both need to be
That's
here
right.
in order for this to operate
That's
and
right.
function, which is really wonderful to company culture because it empowers everybody. One other thing I want to touch on, which is the listening piece, which is so important. I speak about this with public speaking when people are worried to speak in front of a group or anything, and I'm like, it's because you're thinking like 10 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a message? Yeah, I have a message. You have something you want to say to people?
Sure.
Yeah, I have something I want to say to people. Then just start saying it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about how that's going to be received or what's going to be the reaction or anything. If it's all good, right? Like you're not trying to get everybody all upset. Like we're talking about a positive message here, right? Or information that we're sharing. Or even if it is a message that's going to be a message that's like kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But you have to share it.
Yeah.
Is you just got to get it out.
Yeah.
And then wait and listen to the reaction and then respond to it. And in leadership, I think listening is so important. Just listening to the needs of the employee, listening to what they're telling you, and not trying to come up with an answer. And we see that with when someone's trying to sell us something.
Oh, yeah.
We see it when we're trying to work with somebody where they're just trying to give us a quick answer.
Yep, it's
and
the script, whatever it is.
And it's like, you're killing me.
I think that goes into something that I would call authenticity. I mean, we can spot a fake a mile away.
Right.
And so, if I was encouraging someone as a speaker, maybe in a sales environment, maybe just have you're in front of people, just be authentic. I think that's what you're talking about, is just say what you're going to say. I went to Dale Carnegie courses, like there's the message you plan to give, there's the one you actually give, and then there's the one you wish you had given. So, if that's the case, then just be authentic, say what you're going to say, and that's when you'll actually begin to connect to people. Whether it's an employee, whether it's a prospective client, whatever it is, just be authentic. Because if I can get across to you that actually want to help you, right? Who doesn't love that?
Right.
We want to be around those kinds of people. So.
And we're human beings, like you said. And so we're going to make mistakes. And when we speak, we're going to make a mistake.
Yep.
And if, like you said, if we're being authentic, then we could kind of go back and say, hey, you know what, I misspoke there, right? I didn't mean to say that. Or, when I said that, I was coming from this feeling or emotion. And today I recognize that, and this is what I really meant. So you have that opportunity when you're authentic to be able to do that.
I remember early on in my sales, being a salesperson, I would have these scripts. I'd go in with the presentation and knew exactly what I wanted to say. And so many times I just had to scrap it. Yeah. Because I realized I had prepared either wrong or it wasn't what the person really wanted, whatever it is. And now I go in with a couple of bullet points, I know my stuff, and then I'd let it happen as it goes. To me, that's authentic. But number two, it's just smarter because you're just listening to let the person tell you what they need.
That's it. I love that. And if we could leave that for anybody out there in sales, in that, lose the script.
Lose the script.
Oh my goodness. Listen, use the script to learn. Learn from the script, rehearse the script in front of a mirror or something if that's what you want to do.
Then throw it
away. Throw it away. I tell my salespeople that too, is if you just ask a few really good questions, the other person's just going to speak.
Yeah.
Let them speak. They care very little about hearing about your product from you.
Yeah.
They will look it up online.
Sure.
They will read about it. They just care that they know that they have somebody that they can trust.
That's right.
That's really how I feel about sales.
That's so true.
As we conclude,
Sure.
I like to go into your mantra, but one question I do have is your company's, I guess, identity around non-for-profits.
Yeah.
Was there a choice that happened? Did you choose to work with non-for-profits?
I'll honestly say I don't know exactly how it happened, except for the fact that I know that they have huge print needs because of the way they raise money. Even today, more than 2/3 of the way a nonprofit raises money comes from their appeals, from their mailed appeals.
Wow.
So even if the money is raised through a website,
Mhm.
the donor finds out about the appeal through the piece that gets mailed to them.
Wow.
And then they go to the website. So yes, more money is still being maybe transacted through the sites than before,
Right.
but the way that actually the person gets to the site
Right.
is still primarily through print. And I still think that's just fascinating to me. I think it's just part of the need that they have as an industry.
What jumps out to me in terms of that has to do with the old sales training of if you can get somebody's heart, you'll get their wallet. And like I said, that's an old sales training. It sounds very like
Manipulative, maybe.
Right. But what I'm thinking in that is that when you think about the need in print, is that really what you're printing out when you think about non-for-profits is they're doing good for a community, they're
That's
doing
right.
good for our globe, for the people, for
That's
our
right.
humanity. And that tugs on somebody's heartstrings.
Yep.
And so when you think about your business, if it's not a non-for-profit, or you think about what you're doing, is that if you can appeal to somebody's heart, if you could appeal to somebody's emotions
That's right.
through print, then
That's right.
then they go to the website. So it goes back to that whole, it's not either or, it's both.
Yeah.
It's learning how to craft your message in print to where it can translate onto the website.
Yeah, and I tell people, focus on benefits, not features.
Yeah.
So I could tell you that I have the fastest press and I got this and that, but the fact is that doesn't translate to anyone. So how does what I have actually impact you? Okay, 24-hour turnaround or whatever it is. So it's the same thing with nonprofits. If you're crafting a message, you have to spin it as to the person receiving this message, how does it impact them? How does it benefit them? How will they be emotionally connected to you if it's a nonprofit? Or why will they even care about your whatever it is, the size of your business, how fast things go, whatever. So that just goes to that. We always have to connect. We always have to craft our message in terms of the emotional connection and the actual benefit to the end user. Stop talking about features.
Yeah, cool. So I want to wrap up with
Okay.
your mantra, which
What is my mantra?
Here's your mantra. Here's what you sent over to me. You can only do your best today. Don't put effort into attempting to control things you can't. Just adapt, learn, change, and grow into who you want to be tomorrow.
Wow. It's my mantra.
That was, what was that like at 11 o'clock at night? You were writing this out?
No, I believe all of those things sincerely.
I love I think that's the best reaction to somebody's
Wow, that's my mantra.
choice. Wow, okay, so that's what I wrote. But you know what I love about it, when I was reading it, was I was like, he didn't pull this from a book. He wrote this himself. This
I did.
came from his heart.
I did.
And your reaction to it speaks to that, because you're like, all right, that's what I wrote in that moment. That's how I felt. That's how I felt by what I
No,
live
it
by.
still is, because there's so many. I try to.
Yeah.
At least I'll speak for myself. I try to control so much, and I've watched so much sand, go through this closed fist that it's like it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So just take every day as it comes. I know it's a little cliche,
Yeah.
but just take it as it comes. Listen, be humble, and then adapt as you go, and just try to learn something.
Yeah.
Just try to learn it as you go. So.
Well, this has been awesome.
Thanks,
I
man.
feel like I've learned.
Thank
a
you for
tremendous
inviting me.
amount. Yes. No. I mean, this is what it's all about. It's learning from people like you. And I think when I think about our listeners right now, there's just so much in this episode right now as we speak that is to be learned from. So I love the way that
Wow.
you just
Thank you.
shared that message there. And I just want to thank you again for coming on.
It's totally my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, that's it.
All right, Michael.
All right. Cool, man.
Cool. Yeah, that was fun.